Notre Dame Law School graduate and mother of 7, Amy Coney Barrett, has now become only the 115th person to be sworn in as a member of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Barrett is 48 years old and the 5th woman to serve on our country's highest court. So how will she change the court? And will she change the court? For that, we turn to the Director of Legal Studies for the Locke Foundation, Jon Guze, who has been taking a look at some of her previous rulings and joins us to talk about the new justice. Jon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Donna.
She is young just in general, and young for a member of the court. And potentially, Jon, that's 30 to 40 years of Amy Coney Barrett on the United States Supreme Court.
Indeed,
you're talking about
it is.
A generation of impact. Pretty interesting.
Yes, it is. It's very exciting, I think.
Why?
Well, I'm hoping, and everything she's said and written up to this point makes me believe that she's going to be a diehard originalist like her mentor, Antonin Scalia, and like Clarence Thomas, and at least until recently, Neil Gorsuch, which is just what we need on the U.S. Supreme Court and on all the courts in this country.
Why do we need that?
Because, unfortunately, and it's a long story how it happened, but the courts have sort of abdicated what ought to be their job, which is to enforce the law. And they've become super legislatures. They make law. Now, there's some situations where that's okay, but it's not okay when they make law by reinterpreting and changing the meaning of duly enacted statutes. And it's certainly not okay when they do it by reinterpreting and changing the meaning of the U.S. Constitution.
You have listened, well, you've not only read some of her rulings, but you've listened to some of the things she said during her nomination hearings. She made some comments after being sworn in. What do you make of her philosophy? How does she really explain to people how she views her role as a judge and now a justice?
Well, much in the same way that some of our best Supreme Court justices have. She says that her job, ironically, this is something that Chief Justice Roberts said when he was being interviewed and when he was sworn in, but she really will do it. I think she's going to call balls and strikes. She's going to apply the law as it's written, and she's not going to let her personal policy preferences get in the way, let alone anything like party affiliation.
Now, you just said something really interesting, and I want to talk about this. You mentioned Chief Justice John Roberts, and you made kind of a reference to some things that he said in his confirmation hearings. And he, as a non-attorney myself, at my interpretation of what he said, the balls and strikes comment was that he was not going to bring his preferences or views to his decisions. He was going to call balls and strikes. Of course, then when he essentially wrote the opinion that said that the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was constitutional, a lot of folks kind of went back on their heels and said, hey, that's not exactly what you told us how you would view your job in your confirmation hearings. It gets me to this, Jon. When you hear a judge, and now Justice Barrett, say, I'm not going to do that, can we take stock that she won't?
Well, you certainly, we've learned this the hard way. You can't assume that they're going to do what they said they would do. And I don't think we should assume it's because they were lying or being hypocritical at the time. There seems to be something about power that changes people. And we've seen it happen over and over again where a justice moves to the left, or at least to the center, once they get on the Supreme Court. I think part of what happens is they start to see themselves not so much as judges, but as statesmen. They're responsible for the total well-being of the country, and sometimes they've got to make some compromises to their judicial principles. Could happen to Justice Barrett, but I hope it won't, and I don't really think it will. She's had good role models in Antonin Scalia, a good role model in Antonin Scalia, and everything she's written makes me think she's sincere. So my hope is that she'll stay the course. Some of them have, most notably Clarence Thomas, for year after year, and he's been there 30 years now. But he has consistently adhered to originalism and textualism.
Now, Chief Justice John Roberts has been seen by a lot of folks over the past few years as the swing vote. You weren't really sure. Is he going to go with the liberal wing or with the originalist conservative wing? Now that Justice Barrett is on the court, what does she do? What does her philosophy do to the so-called back and forth? Or is there a swing vote anymore?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. He certainly isn't going to be the swing vote in the sense that we're going to have two groups equally for each on the left and on the right that will put him in the position of being able to make the call. That being the case, it'll just be interesting to see whether he continues to side with the left on controversial cases or whether he decides, heck, I can't determine the outcome either way, so I may as well go with my conscience and my best judicial thinking.
I've seen some analysts say, well, the court now is really 6-3, 6 more conservative people and 3 more liberal people. Is that how you see it?
Not really. I mean, it's true, certainly, that we've got 3 Democratic appointments and 6 Republican appointments. And in terms of their political philosophies, I think we can say for certain that all 3 of those Democratic appointees are liberals and favor Democratic policy in general. And then we can say the opposite for the other 6. But what's been interesting over the years, while the 3 Democrats, the 3 liberals, tend to vote in lockstep and along ideological lines on these controversial cases, that really hasn't been true of the other 6. And the reason is originalism. If you adhere to the philosophy that my job is to apply the law as it's written, that makes it much harder for you to just go with your ideological preferences. So I think it'll be interesting, but my hope is that with 6 originalists or quasi-originalists, in the case of Justice Roberts, on the court, we might start to see the whole court change its tenor and stop being so political, stop being so ideological, and start really thinking about what the law says and how it should properly be interpreted.
So we'll be watching to see how the justices behave and rule, etc. But, Jon, there is already backlash from Democrats and people who believe that, Amy Coney Barrett should never have been nominated at the point she was nominated, never have been confirmed, and also that they don't like her philosophy of originalism. There's been talk of what's called packing the court. What do you make of that?
Well, it's kind of horrifying, to be honest. I'm worried, but I'm not terribly worried. There's a lot of institutional inertia, I think almost across the board, academic lawyers and judges of all parties will probably stand up and say this is a mistake.
And we're talking about expanding the court, adding seats.
Yeah, when people talk about court packing, they mean adding seats to get the ideological balance you want. And this goes back to the administration of President Roosevelt when he threatened to pack the court and got the court to change some of its decisions. But if this happens, then everything is up for grabs. I don't know how it'll play out.